Hello everybody, welcome to the Agape Talks, the stories. Here is the story of the devil with the 3 golden hairs. Once upon a time, there lived an old woman who gave birth to a son. As he came into the world with a call on, it was predicted that in his 14th year, he would have the king's daughter as his wife. It happened so soon afterwards the king came into the village and no one knew that he was a king. And when he asked the people what news was there, they answered, "A child has just been born with a call on. Whatever anyone so born undertakes turns out well." It is pre-told too that in his 14th year he will have the king's daughter as his wife. The king, who had a bad heart and was very angry about the prophecy, went to the boy's parents and, seeming quite friendly, said, "You poor people, let me have your child and I will take care of it." At first they refused, but when the stranger offered them a large amount of gold for it, and they thought it is a lucky child and everything must turn out well for it. At last they discussed and decided and gave him the child. The king put the child in a box and rode away with it until he came to a deep water. And he threw the box into it and thought, "I have freed my daughter from her unlooked for suitor." The box, however, did not sink, but floated like a boat, and not even a drop of water made its way into it. And it floated about within 2 miles of the king's chief city, where there was a mill, and it came to a standstill at the mill's dam. A miller's boy, who by good luck was standing there, noticed it and pulled it out with a hook, thinking that he had found out a great treasure. But when he opened it, there lay a pretty boy inside, lively. He took him to the miller and his wife, and as they had no children, they were glad and said, "God has given him to us." They took great care of him, and he grew up in all goodness. It happened that once in a storm, the king went into the mill, and he asked the mill folk if the tall youth was their son. They answered, "No, he is a foundling. 14 years ago he floated down the mill dam in a box, and the mill boy pulled him out of the water." Then the king knew that it was none other than the lucky child which he had thrown into the water. And he said, "My good people, can you ask the young boy to take a letter to the queen? I will give him 2 gold pieces as a reward." They said, "Just as the king commands." And they told the boy to be ready. Then the king wrote a letter to the queen where he said, "As soon as the boy arrives with the letter, let him be killed and buried, and all must be done before I come home." The boy went out with his letter, but he lost his way, and in the evening he came to a large forest. In the darkness he saw a small light. He went towards it and reached a cottage. When he went in, an old woman was sitting alone by the fire. When she saw the boy, she asked, "Where are you coming from, and where are you going to?" He answered, "I come from the mill, and I wish to go to the queen, to whom I am taking a letter. But as I have lost my way in the forest, I would like to stay here overnight." So the old woman said, "You poor boy, you have come into a den of thieves, and when they come home, they will kill you." The boy replied, "Let them come, I am not afraid. But I am so tired that I cannot go any further," and stretched himself upon a bench and fell asleep. Soon afterwards, the robbers came and angrily asked, "Who is this strange boy lying here?" "Ah," said the old woman, "it is an innocent child who has lost himself in the forest, and out of pity I have let him come in. He has to take a letter to the queen." The robbers opened the letter and read it, and in it was written that the boy should be put to death as soon as he arrives. Then the hard-hearted robbers felt pity on the boy, and their leader tore up that letter and wrote another, saying that as soon as the boy come, he should be married at once to the king's daughter. Then they let him lie quietly on the bench until the next morning, and when he woke up, they gave him the letter and showed him the right way. And the queen, when she had received the letter and read it, did as it was written in the letter and had a splendid wedding feast prepared. And the king's daughter was married to that lucky child, and as the youth was handsome and agreeable, she lived with him in joy and contentment. After some time, the king returned to his palace and saw the prophecy was fulfilled and the lucky child married to his daughter. He shouted, "How did it happen? I gave some other order in my letter." So the queen gave him the letter and said that he might see for himself what was written in it. The king read the letter and understood that it had been exchanged for the other. He asked the youth what had become after the letter entrusted to him, and why he had brought another instead of it. So he answered, "I know nothing about it. It must have been changed in the night when I slept in the forest." The king said in a passion, "You shall not have everything so much on your way. Whoever marries my daughter must fetch me 3 golden hairs from the head of the devil from hell. Bring me what I want, and you shall keep my daughter." In this way, the king hoped to get rid of him forever. But the lucky child answered, "I will fetch the golden hairs. I am not afraid of the devil." Thereupon, he left from there and began his journey. The road led him to a large town where the watchman by the gates asked him what was his trade and what he knew. The lucky child answered, "I know everything." Then the watchman said, "You can do us a favor. If you will tell us why our market fountain, which once flowed with wine, has become dry now and no longer gives even water." So he answered, "You will get to know. Wait until I come back." Then he went further and came to another town, and there also the gatekeeper asked him what was his trade and what he knew. He answered, "I know everything." So the gatekeeper said, "Then you can do us a favor and tell us why a tree in our town, which once bore golden apples, now does not even put forth leaves." The lucky child answered, "You will get to know that. Wait until I come back." Then he went on and came to a wide river over which he must go. The ferryman asked him what was his trade and what he knew. The lucky child answered, "I know everything." So the ferryman said, "Then you can do me a favor and tell me why I must always be rowing backwards and forwards and I am never set free." So the lucky child answered, "You will get to know that. Wait until I come back." So when he crossed the water, he found the entrance to hell. It was black and dark within, and the devil was not at home, but his grandmother was sitting in a large armchair. She asked, "What do you want?" But she did not look so wicked. So the lucky child answered, "I would like to have 3 golden hairs from the devil's head. Otherwise, I cannot keep my wife." So she replied, "That's a good deal to ask for. If the devil comes home and finds you, it will cost you your life. But as I pity you, I will see if I can help you." She changed him into an ant and said, "Creep into the folds of my dress. You will be safe there." And the lucky child answered, "Yes, so far so good. But there are 3 things besides that I want to know. Why a fountain which once flowed with wine has become dry and no longer gives even water. Why a tree which once bore golden apples does not even put forth leaves. And why a ferryman must always be going backwards and forwards and is never set free. Those are difficult questions," she answered. "But only be silent and quiet and pay attention to what the devil says when I pull out the 3 golden hairs." As the evening came on, the devil returned home. As soon as he entered, he noticed that the air was not pure. He said, "I smell man's flesh. Everything is not right here." Then he pried into every corner and searched. So let's see what happens to the lucky child in the next video. Thank you so much for the valuable time you spent on watching this video, and consider subscribing to my channel if this video has done something to you in any way. Don't forget to leave a comment because I value them a lot as it's going to encourage me in creating a lot of better contents in the future. Thank you. Give only love.